Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Art of Being a Woman. I'm your host, Courtney, and today we are discussing the art of exposing the ego. Before we get into this topic, I want to give full credit to the teachings of Kabbalah, which is a spiritual wisdom that has really opened my eyes to the way that the world works behind the scenes. Growing up, I always felt like there was more than what meets the eye. I understood that spirituality was a thing, but I never really found a guide or a book or a person that explained it in a way that was easy for me to understand and also feel like this makes sense. It wasn't until I stumbled across a public speaker, his name is David Guillaume, where he would share these clips of him explaining small concepts, and I really resonated with them. It made a lot of sense. So I started off just watching his clips occasionally as they would come up on my Instagram account. And then I remember listening to one of his videos, and he was explaining this concept of the ego, and I wanted to understand it more, but he didn't go into depth. I believe all he said is that if you are interested in the deeper wisdom behind what I'm sharing, you can learn things more in depth by studying Kabbalah. He had a few courses actually that are dedicated to discussing so many spiritual concepts. And he said it's not for everyone, but I will be honest and let you know that the clips that you see on social media are bite-sized information compared to what you could learn if you take the course. At first, I didn't take the course. I just felt like, okay, I'm gaining enough knowledge and I'm really understanding things. But eventually, it wasn't enough. And I just wanted to know more. I had more questions the more I would listen and the more I would learn. And so I decided to invest in taking Kabbalah 1. That's the name of the first course. And then if you finish it and you like it, you can take Kabbalah 2. And then there's Kabbalah 3. And it goes on and on and on. And currently I'm in Kabbalah 6, which is amazing. I only began in the beginning of this year, and I didn't expect to fall in love with it as much as I did, but I'm happy that I did, and I'm happy that it's found its way to me. Now, I bring all of this up because I had no clue what the ego really was prior to learning Kabbalah in depth. I've heard of it before. We all know that people have an ego. We all know that we have an ego, and we all know that it's tied to when we have pride or when we are full of ourselves. And that happens from time to time because we're human. But Kabbalah breaks it down a little bit differently. And I want to really discuss it more in depth and also in my own words. Because first of all, the more that we discuss what the ego is, the less power it has over us and the less power it has over society. Because right now, I believe that we're in a collective state where a lot of us are acting from ego without realizing it. And it's no one's fault. It's just that when the ego goes unchecked, when we don't look within and reflect and take accountability for what we're doing, how we're doing it, why we're doing it, the ego can secretly become bigger and have more control over us than we realize. Understanding the ego in its entirety takes time. And I know that when I first learned about it and I understood what it was, I wanted to know everything about it. And I'm going to share all of that with you. It's just not all going to be in one podcast episode. That is why on my Instagram account, She Is Artfully Woman, I called this post the Ego series because I will be posting quite a few written guides that are specific to understanding the ego and how it operates and how we can best use this knowledge to our advantage. Today, we're going to discuss the art of exposing the ego, which is mainly focusing on what the ego is and what its purpose is. Because this is a spiritual concept, it's going to be explained from a spiritual point of view. And I know not everybody is spiritual, not everybody believes in God, but the only way for me to explain this topic and this series is from that perspective. Whether or not you are spiritual and whether or not you do believe in God, you can still benefit from this episode, and I hope that you do. You don't need to be religious. You don't need to be very spiritual to be a good person. I truly believe that. And understanding the ego can help anyone and everyone become a more self-evolved person, which in the long term ends up benefiting society as a whole. Let's get into the 4 steps that I wrote on my Instagram account. She is Artfully Woman, so that we can dive into what the ego is. Step 1, the ego is the devil on your shoulder. 2, the ego wants you to think every thought is yours. 3, the ego gets stronger every time you feed it. And step 4, the ego exists to be overcome. Step 1, the ego is the devil on your shoulder. I'm not sure which TV show or which cartoon I remember watching growing up, but I remember that whenever certain characters had to make a decision and they were stuck in a standstill between head over heart or body over soul, there would be 2 mini characters on either shoulder. There would be the angel and the devil. The angel would always be really sweet and empathetic and understanding and compassionate, while the devil was just aggressive, not physically, but he was willing to insult anyone, belittle anyone, or just do anything and say anything in order for the person to agree with his point of view and do what he wants the person to do. And so when I was learning about what the ego is, I realized that is exactly what our ego does. Our ego is literally a mini devil in our head that will try to persuade us to do things that limit our growth and limit our compassion. That might sound crazy, to be honest, but there's a purpose to that. And the purpose of the ego trying to almost sabotage our goodness and our true desires in life is because we all have free will. As humans, we get to decide if we want to do good or we want to do bad. If we always knew what was good and if we always knew what was bad, it wouldn't really be much of a choice to do the right thing. If we knew that if we did something selfish or if we gossiped about someone and we instantly faced the repercussions of that action, we would never do anything bad. We would only do good things and we would all be perfect angels, but that wouldn't really be free choice. And so the way that the world works spiritually is that the ego exists to give us that free choice. And it does that by persuading us in the opposite direction. It reminds us you have free will. It's a free world. There's tons of people that do bad things or do selfish things and they're very successful. Why don't you just do that? Lightning's not going to strike you from the sky and kill you the second you do something wrong. Why not just do what makes you happy? And so because we have that internal dialogue in our head, by default, we automatically have free will in every decision we make in life. When I first learned this, it was overwhelming, to say the least, because I realized, wow, so I have to overcome a voice in my head that tries to persuade me to stay small, to be selfish every second of every day. That is one way to look at it. And it's normal to look at it in that way when you first hear about it and learn about it. But if you zoom out and you look at the big picture, every time the ego tries to convince us to be selfish, to play small, and to focus on ourselves and neglect everyone else's feelings, we are given an opportunity to elevate our soul. And we are given an opportunity to elevate our consciousness and our inner power, our own inner resilience. For example, judgment is a big thing for the ego because it likes to distract you from yourself. It likes to make everyone else the problem and not you, because it doesn't want you to grow. It doesn't want you to focus on yourself. It doesn't want you to realize how wise you truly are and how capable you truly are of being an incredible person. The ego also will sound like fear, and the ego will also sound like someone that's trying to control the outcomes of situations and predict the future. For example, with fear, you can have a desire to help someone else, and you know that deep down you want to help someone else. You want to make their life easier. You want to go out of your way and do a favor for them. But then something inside of you is saying, wait a minute. If I sacrifice my time to help them, I'm not going to get any of my own things done. Or if I sacrifice my money to support someone else for a little bit, I'm never going to get that money back. And yes, there's a time and place for when we are generous. But the truth is, we always get what we give. And so the more that we give from a selfless place, the more that we give from a place of trust and certainty, knowing that we will receive everything tenfold, the more we will be replenished very quickly in what it is we're giving to other people. The ego knows that. That is why, instead of it allowing us to easily just be a giver and just be generous people, it's going to create an illusion of fear. It's going to try to get you to control outcomes that you have no control over. The truth is that fear can come true whether we want it to or not. We are truly not in control of certain things in life. And I speak about that in many episodes. We're in control of our thoughts, our feelings, and the choices that we make, but we're not in control of what life hands us. For example, we can convince ourselves through a fear that we don't have enough money to help other people in need. And it can be a valid fear. We look at our bank account and it's not where it usually is. We have bills to pay and we start to feel the reality of it all. What if I don't have enough for myself? How can I give to others if I don't have enough for myself? But the truth is, money can come and go at a second's notice, and it would be completely out of our control. How many times have we assumed that we would have a certain amount of money only to find out that we have to take care of something, whether it's our car or just maintain something, and it just took our whole check? Or even when people gift us things, whether it's a gift card or we get a bonus at work, these are all signs and proof that money can come and go in a second's notice. And when we remember these things, we realize we're not truly in control. Once we accept that, and I spoke about this in a different podcast episode. It's called The Art of Releasing the Need to Control Life. It's a great episode, in my opinion. It's something that once you accept it, you'll feel a lot less anxious in life, because I believe control and anxiety come hand in hand. And once we work on releasing that need to control outcomes, the ego will lose its power over us. And when the ego loses its power over us, our intuition becomes stronger because we're not feeding the ego, we're feeding our soul. Anytime we have trust, anytime we have certainty, anytime we do something without needing to know the outcome, just because it feels like the right thing to do, because we are coming from a giving place and a selfless place, that is when we become more powerful internally, and therefore we get it reflected right back to us externally in the real world. A simple example of this, and I've noticed this in my own life, the more giving I am with money, the more I receive spontaneous gifts from other people. I'm not saying to give all your money away and the whole world will give you all your money back in an instant, but the more trusting that you are of life and the more trusting you are that you are protected and that if you do the right thing, good things will come your way, the more life will reflect that truth right back to you. But if you give in to your fears and you give in to the ego trying to control outcomes and the judgment and the gossip and all of this small-minded behavior, that's all you're going to get reflected right back to you. It's actually very interesting that the more that we gossip, the more people gossip about us. And the more that we judge other people, even if it's in our mind, the more people will judge us. It's a frequency, it's an energy. So being conscious of what the ego is trying to do on a daily basis, whenever we have to make choices, it's the first way that we can get our power back, because without realizing it, we have been giving our power away to our ego and it's been running the show. Step 2, We have the ego wants you to think every thought is yours. The way that the ego gets its power and its influence over us is by deceiving us and convincing us that it doesn't even exist. This happens all the time without us realizing. When we have an urge to gossip, when we're frustrated, when we're triggered, all of this, we can have the most justifiable reason as to why we're being reactive and why we are thinking something and doing something without considering other people. But the truth is, it's not truly what we want to be doing. It's not truly our desire to blame other people. It's not our desire to judge others and to compare ourselves to others. And we all know this because it doesn't feel good to do any of those things. Yeah, we might feel good for a few seconds in the heat of the moment because we feel this rush of control and power of the situation. For example, I had to work on not being reactive while I was driving, even if it was in my head, even if I was just saying something under my breath. Because what does it truly do for me other than put me in a negative headspace and put me in a negative mood? Not only that, it puts me in this mentality that I'm a victim to the situation. Poor me that someone cut me off while I was driving. We can definitely choose to look at situations in life that way, where life is causing us to react. Or we can actually take responsibility for what's within our control and choose not to allow things outside of us, the things that we cannot control, dictate our reactions and dictate how we speak and how we feel. Because if we're constantly going to let life and external influences, whether it's people and circumstances, determine how we feel and determine our state of being, we're always going to feel like a victim to life. And we're going to constantly feel like we're suffering. When the truth is, we're not physically suffering necessarily. We're suffering in our mind because we're allowing the ego to create a story where we're the victims and life is unfair and things don't go our way. The goal when we are faced with these thoughts that challenge us and try to convince us that we're victims of life, we need to challenge these thoughts. We do this by first observing them, not resisting them. But once we become aware of what we're telling ourselves and we pause and we're like, whoa, wait, I'm not a victim of life. That's when we can decide, you know what? I'm not going to choose that thought. I'm not going to spiral downward deeper into it. I'm not going to feed it, because we all know what happens when we do feed our negative thoughts. Life starts giving us more reasons to see that it's true, whether it's actually true or not. So, for example, if you start your day and right off the bat, things are going completely against how you planned it to go. You have a flat tire, the roads are closed off, you name it. We can allow those things outside of our control to convince us that we're a victim of life. And of course, this is happening to me and things never seem to go my way. Or we can choose to flip the script and tell ourselves, you know what? Actually, I have no proof that this is truly bad for me. For all I know, my life was spared because I had a flat tire. And for all I know, it was important for me to stay home today, even though I thought from my limited point of view that it was absolutely necessary that I go to work today. And so it's all about the thoughts that we choose to entertain. It's not so much about the thoughts that come to mind, because we are not in full control of the thoughts that come to mind. It's what we do with those thoughts. To summarize this step in short, as you go through your day and you observe that there are some negative thoughts that you'd rather not entertain, you'd rather not agree with, whether it's thoughts that are telling you you're not good enough, that today's a bad day, it's your fear of things not working out the way that you want them to work out. Whenever those thoughts surface, do not internalize them. Do not attach feelings to these thoughts, because that is when the universe will start to reflect it back to you as truth. Choose in those moments where you have that fear, where you have that doubt, and remind yourself that you are in control of what you focus on, and you are in control of what you decide to internalize. Only attach to the thoughts that you want to manifest into your reality. Step 3. The ego gets stronger every time you feed it. The cool thing about the ego, in my opinion, is that it's not strong and it's not powerful without getting its energy from us. And so initially, when you start to observe your thoughts and you start to notice, wow, in certain moments, I'm very judgmental in my mind. I didn't realize that. Or in certain moments, I'm very reactive and I didn't realize that. Whether you're in situations that trigger you or you're around certain people that trigger you, you might feel like the urge to react and the urge to judge is so strong, it feels unfair and it feels impossible to overcome. If you've been reacting to certain people that trigger you for 20 years of your life, how are you expected to all of a sudden do the complete opposite and sort of kill them with kindness? I completely understand that struggle because I've been there. We all go through that in the beginning when we decide that we do not want the ego controlling our life. The truth is, though, the ego is only strong in certain areas of our life because we've been feeding it in those areas of our life without realizing. And it's nothing to have shame about because we were truly unaware. And what matters now is what we do with the knowledge that we have. The fact that you're listening to this episode and you made it all the way up until this point, you have a choice. When the ego is trying to get your energy again, and get you to be reactive and get you to be judgmental and get you to be selfish, that is when you need to exercise your willpower and your self-control and pause. That's all you have to do in the beginning. Delay reacting. Once you delay that instant reaction to feel that instant gratification and that instant ego boost, the ego will get weaker instantly because it feeds off of us for energy and for power. Every single time we do that, every single time we pause before we react, and every time we choose to not do something that will feed our ego, it gets weaker and weaker in that area of our life until the point that it doesn't even mess with us anymore. It doesn't even try to test us anymore. Of course, a test will come up every now and then. For example, for me, road rage is a big thing. In my head, when I get cut off, I get so reactive. I'll say a comment or I'll just instantly feel like a victim without even thinking twice. And the truth is, it's because I've acted like that for so long. I fed my ego in that area of my life for so many years that now I'm almost playing catch up and I have to course correct every single time I get cut off or every single time I feel like cars are not moving as fast as they should. It has nothing to do with other people and it has everything to do with me. So anytime and every time I feel frustrated when I'm driving, I realize, pause, this is a test, and it's an opportunity for me to get all my power back that I gave to the ego. I allowed the ego to convince me that I'm a victim when I'm driving. I would really believe that for some reason, every time I'm behind the wheel, there's always a slow driver in front of me. Or anytime I was driving, there's always just obnoxious drivers cutting me off right and left. And to be completely honest, when I really did the internal work, I realized there are many moments when I get frustrated behind the wheel and I feel like people are not driving fast enough. I will cut other people off. And I didn't even realize that the things that were bothering me, I was doing to other people. In the beginning, I definitely felt shame reflecting on it, like, oh God, the things that I'm getting so upset about, I've been doing all this time. But honestly, now that time has passed and I've accepted that life is a process, you have to experience the light and the dark of a situation to appreciate the whole lesson. Now, when I'm in those situations, I feel more at peace and I feel more calm. Obviously, it's a challenge, but it has definitely gotten easier once I've allowed myself to take a step back and really just observe what's going on and also reflect on the fact that I have the power. I decide whether I'm going to be reactive, whether I'm going to give my ego the satisfaction that it's craving. It also helps me to remember that a bad day for the ego is a good day for the soul. That's a quote that I heard from someone. I'm not sure who, but it's such a beautiful quote because there are so many times in life where our ego will get bruised and we might think it's a bad day. Whether we go to work and someone is critiquing our work, or we do a favor for someone and they tell us they didn't even want us to do the favor, whatever the case may be. And then our ego feels very undervalued, not appreciated. In those moments, the ego will try to flip it and blame the other person and say they're not appreciative of us and they're not grateful enough for us, and perhaps we shouldn't have done X, Y, and Z at all because we didn't get the feedback that we deserve. But the truth is, every single time the ego gets hurt, that's when our true soul comes to the surface. Because what the ego doesn't want us to realize is that we don't need anything or anyone outside of us to be confident, to be self-assured, to be validated. It all comes from within. And when all of our confidence and all our validation and self-worth comes from within, we have no reason to be reactive. We have no reason to be triggered by anybody outside of us. And the ego knows that. So it will make us focus on everything else and everyone else but ourselves so that it maintains control and it maintains power. To summarize this step, remember, the more that we repeat ego-based reactions, the more familiar and normal they feel. They will not even feel egotistical. They will feel right, and they will feel like people deserve our reactions. But by choosing not to react impulsively, we reclaim our power and we rewire what feels natural and what feels fulfilling to us. It's important to remember that when we feed our ego, we will feel good for a few moments, but then that good feeling will drop, and it will drop lower than it was even before we reacted, because it's not in alignment for us to act egotistical. But when we act from our soul's point of view and we refuse to feed our ego, we might not feel that boost of energy and that boost of confidence in that moment, but we will always feel better for a longer period of time. Step 4, the ego exists to be overcome. I touched on this a little bit when I spoke about step 1, but I'm going to really go deeper into this concept. Based on everything that I've said so far, it gives the impression that the ego is our enemy, that it's always trying to make us lose in terms of choosing faith over fear, choosing strength over weakness, and choosing long-term fulfillment instead of short-term gratification. But think of it this way. If we were to play a sport and the opposing team lost every single time and we won every single time, would we be able to say that we're good at that sport? Are we good at that game? Are we talented? Are we skilled? If there was no resistance, if there was no opposition? Absolutely not. That is why the ego exists. Because how can we ever say that we're good people, that we have a strong sense of self-worth, confidence, self-respect, and also a love and respect for others when we're never challenged? That is why the ego exists. The ego will present the same types of challenges, the same types of triggers over and over again to refine our response. That's why we can feel like we're stuck in a loop. Many people will say, why do I keep attracting the same type of person? It's because our reaction in those relationships are the same. And in order for us to overcome our egotistical nature in those relationships, we have to change our response and we have to change our thoughts and our perception of these obstacles in our life. Whenever we look at situations in our life, such as a relationship pattern that just seems to be never ending, or having bad luck, so to speak, even though there is no such thing as luck, it's because there's a lesson hidden within those cycles. And in order to get out of those cycles, we must choose differently. We must choose to overcome being reactive and being impulsive, to pausing and reflecting, and then choosing a better outcome. Discomfort is the ego's ultimate trick. It knows that when we're uncomfortable, that is when it's very hard for us to pause and reflect on ourselves. And so that is usually when we are being tested, when we are experiencing some sort of discomfort in our life. But the truth is, the sooner we face this discomfort, the sooner we'll build our tolerance to it, and we will no longer feel threatened when we face this discomfort. We'll embrace it because we know that we're being tested. And once we pass that test, the ego will get smaller and weaker, and we will elevate into a higher version of ourselves. I like to look at the ego in my own life as this. Anytime I have a desire, or anytime I have a manifestation, I believe that God never says no. It's either yes, not now, or something better. Now, there's moments when we ask for something and all we had to do was ask. We were already in the mentality of someone that is ready to receive what we're asking for. But there are also moments when we are asking for something that we're not in the mindset of yet, and we're not ready to handle that amount of abundance yet. For example, if we are someone that has $20,000 in our bank account and we have a desire to be a millionaire, it's not going to happen instantly because there's a process. That doesn't mean that it can't happen quickly. It happens quickly for many people. Other people, it takes years. But my point is, whenever we ask for something and we happen to not be mentally ready and strong enough to maintain it for a long period of time, that is where the ego comes in, because God doesn't say no. He says yes, not yet, or something better. And the only way that we can change that not yet to a yes, and the only way that we can get that something better, is if we become the version of ourselves that is able to feel deserving of it, meaning when the ego tries to put doubt in us and convince us that it will never come true for us, we still maintain that faith and we still maintain that confidence because we built it from scratch. We've been tested before by the ego. And so if this episode has you reflecting on the thoughts that you have been entertaining throughout your life and you realize, wow, I might have been really feeding my ego a lot more than I realized, just know whenever the ego shows up, it's because God is trying to give us something great. He's trying to give us something that we asked for or something better. It's up to us to decide if we have the willpower and the mental strength to receive it and to maintain it, even when we're faced with these fears and these doubts that the ego tries to plant in our mind. Before I wrap up this podcast episode, I want to make sure that it's known this is not about perfection. There will never come a time in life where the ego will never bother us, because there's never a time in life where we're not capable of receiving more from God and receiving more from the universe. And so it's a good thing when we're being tested by the ego, because it means that desires and manifestations and blessings are trying to come through. It's up to us to decide if we're ready for it. And if for whatever reason we are reactive and we only realize afterwards, oops, I was reactive, don't worry. The same situation will come up again, maybe not the same exact way, or maybe not with the same exact person, but you will have an opportunity again, because ultimately the ego is trying to help us. It's just being a really good opponent. I believe there's some sort of quote that states you're only as good as your opponent. And so the more the ego puts pressure on you to grow and to become a better person, the more blessings and opportunities you're meant to receive. I hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast episode as much as I enjoyed making it. I look forward to recording another episode, diving deeper into specific ways that the ego tries to distract us and throw us off course so that we catch these tactics in real time and we transform internally. And through transforming internally and being proactive rather than reactive, we start unlocking a lot of miracles in our life very quickly. And I know this because I've experienced this, and I guarantee that you will experience this too once you start implementing this into your life as well. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to this episode. I love you all. Until next time, bye for now.